eroded and undermined large areas in two different spots, north on the closest portion, the eastern portion of the dam, closest to the eastern portion of the dam, and also in the western portion, there's two large crevasses there that are undermining that area, and that needs to be repaired. But the water level has dropped itself to about 853 feet, but it's then they're saying it's creeping down, getting lower and lower. For that water to go to the spillway, it's 901 feet. But the problem that they have is they're just not telling people the truth about where is all the water. And the water is stored up in the three fingers of the Feather River in 9 dams. And these dams are basically being used as holding dams to prevent any water from coming down into Oroville. And the reason why they don't want water in Oroville and why they want to desperately drain it as quickly as possible is because the liquefaction that's going on in this earthen dam and also around the perimeter of the earthen dam is very much a problem. And this is a concern. They also have a three-step redundancy in the valve system there with the spillway, the main spillway. And the three-step redundancy is that they have to be able to operate the valves that go on that spillway. And they can't operate the valves under the main two systems, which is their own generation of electricity at the dam that they normally do, and they can't do it now because all the spillways there are clogged up. So they're not able to even put water out of the dam using those spillways. But the other part of it is that the electrical power they use from the dam is used to adjust those gates, if you will, at the spillway. Well, they can't use that because it's non-functional, and PG&E disconnected the cables, the power cables to the dam, so they can't use PG&E power. Now they're relying upon generators, large generators that look like sea containers that they've brought in from outside that run on diesel fuel to actually operate. So they're on their third set level of redundancy, plus the main spillway, because of so much turbulence of water that's going over it, creating a cavitation effect, is starting to destroy the main spillway even at a faster rate than what they thought. So you're getting a creeping destruction of the main spillway, which is what they're dumping, more than what the spillway is expected to hold in a natural state. They're dumping more and more water down there and creating more and more damage on the existing spillway. That is creeping back up towards the dam. I don't see that spillway lasting under heavy conditions, which we will not get to the heavy conditions of runoff and snowmelt from the Sierras until June. The natural pattern in our system here in California is that the major runoff and the anticipated runoff that fills up Oroville Dam does not occur until June. Well, we've already had one event already in which we've got the lake basically filled. If they were to release that water upstream, it would still fill up. We'd still be at the same situation. So we're going to be in a constant state between now and June, and maybe even July and August, of this dam being filled up and putting pressure on these spillways. And quite frankly, they will not sustain it. The main spillway now is in doubt, and the emergency spillway is definitely in doubt if it has to be used again. So this is a catastrophe waiting to happen. And the sad thing is that Jerry Brown, the governor of the state of California, knew full well and has known almost for 7 years that this dam needed repaired. And he chose to spend the money on social programs, primarily for his illegal immigrants that he's brought in illegally into this country, for social programs for them. He's diverted the money from that. And plus, the other thing is that he's not real fond of dams. He's actually going to spend $250 million to tear down 4 dams, actually to breach 4 dams in Northern California. He's part of remember, Jerry is is an environmentalist wacko. He's one of the kingpins of the environmental movement. He's a globalist, and he wants to tear down dams as they've been doing all throughout the western United States. So if Oroville goes down, which, by the way, is a state-owned and run dam, it's not a federal dam. Donald Trump has no responsibility for it fiscally. He would, of course, if there's a disaster, and it looks like there could be a possible disaster, which there's going to be a large loss of life that this country has never seen before, never, ever seen before, the size and scope of this disaster that could happen. And there's the probability is quite high.
Paul, one of the things you mentioned to me before we went on air live was that the temperatures upstream are starting to rise, which will add to the snow
Right.
melt. What can you tell us about that?
Well, some of the forecasting that's going on right now show that at about 6,000 feet, which is the prime altitude for the Sierra for the snowpack up in that area of Plumas County and Butte counties. They're predicting its temperatures by March 5th as high as 62 degrees, and the snow melt will be on. It will be on. I used to live up in that area for 9 years, and I've seen it when the snow melt is on. You can have 5 or 6 feet of standing snow in one day, and the next day it's nothing but slush and mud. That's a huge impact upon the Oroville Dam. It'll be huge.
Now, knowing that conditions vary from year to year, but typically in an average year, when does the snow melt tend to peak and add maximum amount of moisture into the water?
Usually by the end of March and through April, you'll start to see it peaking, and then you get into the full force of the melt and the water coming into the dam accumulates over the next month, and that's why it rises up in June to be the prime time when it's filled with all the runoff.
I showed a video today to an engineer that does this hydraulic work and familiar with the dams, and I forwarded him this video that's on YouTube. And what it showed from a helicopter was that there's massive erosion next to the spillway, horrible erosion. And he took one look at it, and he told me, he said, in his opinion, this cannot be repaired unless you lay down cement. But you can't lay down cement unless the water levels recede tremendously. Have you heard anything about that kind of observation?
Well, is he talking inside the spillway on where the water is, the water side?
Yeah, a
Is
cement.
that where he was talking?
Yeah, he wants us. He said they need a cement barrier to prevent further erosion, but he said they have to fix the erosion. In his opinion, it looks so severe to him. He said that this
Right.
erosion is not going to take care of itself in the near future. The best thing to do right now would be to cover it over with cement.
Well, it sounds to me like you might be talking about the front of it because they've been shooting rockcrete in there, the rock shot, I guess they call it, which is basically gunite in that whole area in the front of the emergency spillway. I don't think that's quite enough. You still got those two big crevasses. The one crevasse has been filled in. That's the one closest to the dam. That's the one I was actually witnessing on February 11th, them frantically trying to fill in with gunite and rock. And of course, it just all washed away because the gunite hadn't had time to set up or anything.
Exactly.
And then on the other end of that weir, it's a weir type dam situation with the natural spillway. It's supposed to bring the water down in sheets, and it works actually quite well as long as it's on concrete. But the concrete was never. In 2005, a bunch of people filed a complaint with the federal government for licensing reasons that they should, in fact, put concrete on that spillway rather than leaving it a natural dirt
Yes.
design. And that's what's been a problem, of course, is now it's all torn up. But the bigger problem as I see it, and what we're seeing is one of the reasons they will not allow aircraft to go over the dam is because from what we understand and what pictures we have been able to see, which are not real good pictures, but there's severe damage on the side of the dam that's inside where the water is. And now this part of the dam, now hear me out, ladies and gentlemen, this is the emergency spillway dam. It's not the whole dam itself. So that's a whole different picture. But there's cratering, there's crevassing on the inside, and that's just going to do nothing but lead to undermining of the dam itself, the spillway dam, and that portion. And I don't think they've been addressing that in a proper way, and that's a big concern. They need to fill all that in, and they need to gunite it. They need to reinforce it. I don't think they'll have the time to do it, and it doesn't look like they're certainly working quite diligently on the outside, on the dry side, so to speak, but it doesn't seem like they're doing much on the inside, and that's where the bigger problem is.
Okay. You said a lot of things that I heard from this engineer. The problem is I'm the messenger and I'm expressing something I don't know
Right.
I don't know a lot about, but that's exactly what he said. He talked about the erosion is so severe, Paul. He said, I don't see how they can fix it. He said that spillway is useless.
Well, the one spillway that's useless is the main spillway right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a design flaw. What the reason why that cavity opened up is because of what's called cavitation, and that spillway was designed poorly, as a lot of spillways have been designed poorly back in that age. You have the Lake Powell, I can't remember the Grand Dam in Pete or Grand Powell Dam or whatever it was called. They had the same problem with their spillways. And by the way, it was a vintage dam of the 1960s, just like this one is. And this is the dam that's for Lake Powell in Arizona and Colorado, and all, for the Colorado River in Arizona. But that one ate away at the spillway and did massive damage to it, and could have absolutely caused a huge catastrophe there, and released a lot of water out of Lake Powell. The same thing happens here. What cavitation is when water goes rushing down a chute, such as what you see, and it's basically a slab of concrete that the water goes down. And what happens is that water started to descend rapidly, and then all of a sudden it dropped off and descended even faster. It causes disturbances in the water that's flowing, actually, and causes a spiral rotation in the water, and that actually has mass to it. And it adds to sort of like a pounding, thumping reverberation against the concrete that ultimately breaks it down. And that's exactly what you've seen here. And it's a design flaw. It should have been addressed. Jerry Brown was aware of it in 2013, did nothing about it, spent the money on other things. And here we are today, faced with one of the biggest non-natural man-made disasters the world's probably ever seen.
That's
what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I try and get this word out, and I know you're doing a great job, Dave, by getting this out to everybody. And here at Agenda 21 Radio, we're doing everything we possibly can to get the word out that this represents, could be one of mankind's greatest human disasters ever. And there's a possibility that we could have 100,000, 200,000, maybe as a million people killed by this. And everybody's trying to keep it low key. That's why Jerry Brown is hiding. We need leadership on this. We need leadership, real leadership. And we need people to be stepping up and telling us the truth. And we know that the Department of Water Resources are lying. Now, as an example, yesterday we ran the story, and it's just blown up all over the place, that a reporter, it's kind of interesting how they've been doing this. Katie Grimes, who writes for ReaganBaby.com and also for us and Flash Report, who Jerry Brown has a total disdain for Katie and her reporting, but Katie's always right about Jerry Brown. That's why he doesn't like her. So on Monday, she writes an article and calls him out and says basically he's a coward. He's not leading. He's running away from his leadership responsibility. So what happens is we find out on Tuesday that all press reports or all press conferences at the dam will no longer happen after Tuesday. So who shows up at the dam? In secret, but Jerry Brown. And, oh, by the way, a reporter from a local TV station who did not get the memo that there was no more press conferences, she just happens to show up at the right